if the sire advice is done to, in a reasonably sound way, that when your technician will call into your yard, what comes up with the handheld, well, they'll know that Stuart Childs wants a day of beef straw and that cow, or a dairy straw, and that's all mapped out before the breeding season kicks off. And look, farmers are busy; they're not always going to be in the yard the day or the morning, whatever the case may be, the evening when the technician is there. Whereas if it's up with the handheld, look, there's no arguments or debate about it. The technician has a clear set of instructions to work from.
We are just on the cusp of the breeding season, and indeed some people may already have started their AI. And today I'm joined by Dan O'Riordan from ICBF to discuss the Sire Advice Programme, which remarkably is around since 2007. So I started by asking Dan to tell me, what exactly is Sire Advice?
So Stuart, Sire Advice is our main breeding application tool that's available to all Herd Plus users. It's available, I suppose, we would just say available on the desktop version, I suppose, is just to highlight it, I suppose, and something that it's our premium tool in the dairy package, I suppose, as we would see it. This is the time of the year where farmers go in. I suppose they're trying to make breeding decisions. The Sire Advice tool tries to help them make those breeding decisions in terms of maybe cows for dairy, cows for breeding, cows for beef, and there'll be certain cows we mark for possibly culling, beef mating, and there's crossbreeding options as well. So look, there's something for all systems within the Sire Advice. How the program actually works, I suppose it's essentially an algorithm and two where the bull in your team that's best in milk sub-index will be typically be matched or mated to the cow that's poorest in milk sub-index in your herd. It's trying to get a balance on fertility as well, on the mating outcome and the progeny produced. So what the Sire Advice program is trying to produce is a balanced female in terms of milk and fertility. You don't want your heifer produce being strong on milk and poor on fertility, or vice versa. Trying to get that balance right. So you'll obviously be picking a variance of sires in your team, and there's obviously a variance in your cow. So the Sire Advice is trying to minimize those balances in the progeny being produced. It's looking after the inbreeding piece, Stuart. I suppose that's a big thing I'd like to remind just the listeners there on. I suppose some farmers, we still get calls thinking that Sire Advice doesn't do the inbreeding check. It's one of the checks that's completed as part of the program as well. And it's trying to do, I suppose, one other important job there. So I suppose we do advise farmers to pick a variance of different bulls in your team. Maybe ones that are strong in milk, strong in fertility. There'll be other herd goals we looking at. But one of the jobs Sire Advice tries to do in the background as well, I suppose, it looks at the milk PTA of the bull. So if a bull is plus 200 on milk, and it might be just plus 100, whatever the case may be, it's typically mated to the cow that's negative for milk. So it's trying to look at or note those imbalances in the milk kilos as well. So it's doing all that work in the background there, Stuart. And that's the main 3 or 4 main primary functions what the breeding mating program is doing in the background when it runs through the results.
So effectively then there's, as you said, there's kind of an option for everybody. So even if a person was going to put beef straws across everything that they had themselves, they can still use the Sire Advice for that purpose even.
That would be unusual, Stuart, but yes, we do it. There is dairy beef matings that were introduced to Sire Advice in 2022. A lot of farmers may not be aware of it there, but I suppose we are trying to generate, I suppose, better dairy beef quality calves. Look, there's been a lot of coverage in CVV and DBI, particularly this spring and the spring before. It's just gaining in more awareness. And I suppose in relation to the dairy beef mating, Stuart, the mating program is trying to, I suppose the first thing I want to say underline is the mating program is trying to create a live dairy beef calf in the ground. And that's something that we will work closely with, I suppose, Donaberry with in the beginning and developing the dairy beef matings. It's trying to roll out any difficult calvings, get that live calf on the ground first. It's trying to improve the beef quality of the calf as well. So again, like your dairy team, if you're picking a variance of sires with a good beef sub-index, hopefully €100 or more on beef sub-index, with a variance of maybe difference of calving risk, because obviously in your herd, Stuart, you will have a variance of cows. Older cows, more mature cows can probably deal with maybe the bigger beef sub-index, and maybe they're slightly maybe in the medium risk of calving potentially, possibly. But there's no reason why that more mature third, fourth, fifth lactation cow should be able to cope with that without causing any calving risk. And there is a penalty in the background there, so we won't put any creative mating that's going to create create a difficult calving for a farmer, because we don't want farmers out there in the spring. Nobody wants to call a vet or use the calving jack, and we don't want any of that scenario happening. So the program's looking after that, and again is trying to look at the size of the cow, the beef sub-index, the calving ability of the cow, the pelvic width. It takes all those factors in, and then what the probability of the size of the calf is going to be based on the genetics from the sire and the dam, and then it factors all that into the program. But again, having a variance in your dairy beef team as well, and look, 60% to the I suppose the national animals being killed or slaughtered now are dairy beef animals. So I suppose we just need to try and, I suppose, encourage farmers more to, and particularly using BFI, to maybe to take that little bit extra time to pick the beef bulls and put them through the Sire Advice when they're using BFI. And obviously the dairy beef welfare scheme is there, is highlighting, I suppose, the need, or the highlighting the need to use the dairy beef, meeting the minimum criteria for the dairy beef. If we are purchasing stock, well, just to remind them, just to the minimums 3-star and DBI overall, and the minimum 3-star and V sub-index, and that eligibility comes up in the ICBF animal sort as well. So look, it's looks after all that, Stuart, the Sire Advice on the BFI side anyway.
Yeah, I think it's underestimated then in terms of what it's doing from the beef point of view. Like it is really, really trying to, like I think there might be a perception around or a particular breed of bull or whatever is going to be maybe harder calving, but because of the way it's selecting on the female as well as the bull itself, the risk of calving difficulty is dramatically reduced with the use of the Sire Advice program around the dairy beef. Like,
Yeah, sort of. I suppose this is where we can ask farmers, or advisors can go in there and say, look, that cow is a low EBI cow. It's a late calver, might be third or fourth or fifth lactation. Look, perfectly suitable for a beef mating. You can actually pick the cows out that you want to put the beef straw in through the Sire Advice at the beginning, and have all that done. And then it's just a case of picking a range of beef bulls. Then we think the job is easy enough. You can identify beef bulls just to be used on cows or heifers, or both, whatever the case may be, the same as your dairy sire selections, and then let the program take care of the rest, in terms of the outcome on the end product.
but again, it's important to point out to people that you're talking about a team of bulls for beef as well as you would be for the dairy. So it's very similar in terms of that team approach.
Correct, Stuart. So look, if a farmer goes out there and simply picks easy calving bulls, and without giving too much thought in terms of maybe the beef sub-index of those sires, well, look, we probably won't be able to improve the beef merit of the calves being produced in. I suppose the program is only as good as the input as well. Just to remind everyone, I suppose without good input, we're not going to have reasonably good output either. So look, that's an important point as well, Stuart.
Okay, so then, like you've spoken extensively there now about the dairy beef and how that came in 2022, but are there further improvements that you've introduced this year that people should be aware of?
Yeah, so Stuart, look, we have a lot of herds participating on the national genotyping program now. So I think we've about 4,500 dairy herds now participating in that program now. So we have introduced, once we have those farmers now with those genotyped animals, we can now, I suppose, check to see is there any carriers of any potential lethal genes. TH11s is the name of those genes. And look, I'm not a geneticist now, Stuart, just for the listeners there, so I'll try and explain this as simply as I can that to the listeners there. So we're trying to avoid those matings that are going to carry those matings happening and those mutations happening. So the Sire Advice will just basically, so if that sire is going to cause that mating with the genotype dam, it's going to be blocked on the Sire Advice is in the end product. So it'll be similar to the inbreeding check. It'll be just rule that mating out because of that reason. The farmers themselves, and including myself, I won't see it. It'll just happen in the background through the database check. But those carriers won't, that carrier mating will be blocked or prevented through using the Sire Advice mating program.
So by knowing the genetics of the cow through the genotyping program, and obviously the bull's been genotyped anyway,
Correct.
it can tell that the risk of this animal potentially generating that carrier animal is a possibility and blocks that from happening.
Correct, Stuart, yes.
Oh, okay. And I suppose the big thing, so what's HH1 and HH3 like? They're, as from what I understand, is basically they're potentially causes of mid-season embryonic loss, so or maybe even just in a post-breeding season embryonic loss, that it basically stops a calf being born from that cow, even though that cow may have gone in calf perfectly well to the serve in the first place. So she could have been served the 1st of May, could be gone in calf, and subsequently just loses that calf because of this mutation.
Correct, sir. So look, that can happen up to 200 days in gestation. So again, it's something that the cow will go on calving, and we don't want you don't want that happening up the road couple of months later. So hopefully it's looking after that piece. So look, there may be other mutations down the roads that'll come on board that will identify through the genotyping, through the genomic sort. So look, the Sire Voices for us gives us the flexibility to add these checks in as we go on. So look, the technology is exciting from that point of view, and I suppose look, it's just adding another string to the bow, Sire Advice, in terms of the checks and balances it can do for farmers on the ground.
Okay, so the other thing, I suppose, there's how many people have been using Sire Advice to date now. So, and one of the other changes that you brought in this year is the save selections, which will be a big advantage to people that have been using it all along anyway. So, firstly, I suppose, how many people are using it, and then what does that save selections do for people that have been using it to date?
Yeah, so Stuart, I suppose last year in 2024, I suppose uh, just over 4,000 herds ran Sire Advice for their herds. Um, so that figure has, I suppose, over the years. If you ask me that question, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there was about 2,500 herds running Sire Advice. That's grown steadily over the years up to 4,000 herds. And look, there's obviously if advisors are running Sire Advice for clients, there's breeding advisors running Sire Advice for clients. But look, we like to think that the Sire Advice um, is user friendly from the point of view the farmers should be able to go in there and use the program themselves. A lot of farmers pick their own bulls. Look, from recent surveys we've carried out, 70% of farmers are picking their own bulls from catalogs or some source or active bull list or whatever the case may be. So if the farmer has a clear idea of their bull team, we would say they should have a clear idea their females as well, should be able to use the program and run it through. Stuart, sorry, what's the second part of that question,
Oh
Stuart?
yeah,
Sorry.
so just the save selections for the people that have been using it, save selection is going to be a big benefit, I would think.
Yeah, correct, Stuart. So look, that was a major, I suppose, bugbear there a couple of years ago. So we tried to tackle that if a farmer, for example, runs a sow advice today, Stuart, whatever cows they mark for dairy or beef or for crossbreeding or whatever the case may be, or the contract matings in terms of selective mating, they all hold. So you can run it as many times as you want, and so long as you have those female selections put through, they all hold. That wasn't the case 3 or 4 years ago. We've added that feature in, so that allows farmers to make bull changes more easily. And that's another thing that happened as well 2 years ago, that we've also retained the sires you select. So you can pull a bull team, pull a bull out of your bull team or add a bull into your bull team, Stuart, much more easier. So you can run it very, very quickly, a rerun of it. And there will be cases where a farmer may have to rerun Sire Advice, Stuart. So a bull you may select today, look, for whatever reason, may not be available at the time the breeding season commences. There'll be other bulls become available, such as your Gene Ireland bull team may be allocated, and then you might have to add those in as part of your main bull team. So we'd encourage the farmers who will be allocated for Gene Ireland to do that as well. And obviously, Stuart, there'll be other fresh semen bull panels, etc., coming on during the breeding season as well. So a farmer can actually just go in there, I can add those bulls in, run it through quickly and easily. And I suppose you're not bound to one version of Sire Advice. I suppose we like to make it flexible. So if you do run Sire Advice tomorrow or the day after that again, those selections will be saved and sent off to your technician's handheld or app, or they'll come up on your own personal farm software app you may be using. And as I say, the PDF report, a lot of farmers use the Sire Advice PDF report and just print that off at home, and they have it up there in the parlor or wherever the cows they are stored. So a lot of farmers work with that way. So look, there's different options, but you're not bound. You can rerun it anytime, many times as you want.
Okay, so that's yeah, as I said, that'll be a big benefit to people, and like you said, for the different reasons with bulls coming in and bulls coming out and so forth, maybe or maybe even just running out of a particular bull that you had bought into the pot or whatever. It gives great flexibility that you're not having to start from scratch. I suppose then the TB has really, really come to the fore. All the AI companies this year are making a big play in it in terms of that TB resistance. They all they would have had the top tens down through the years for the fats and the proteins and so forth. They've added that nearly now in terms of a TB resistance as well. So the TB resistance has been available through ICBF for a good number of years. He brought it into the mix in terms of the actual EBI maybe 2 years ago or so. And this year now you've added it in terms, it's very clear to people when they go into Sire Advice in terms of if they're hitting on a red bull, that they're consciously selecting a bull that's potentially at risk of TB if they do it. So just, I suppose, maybe a little bit on the breeding for TB resistance first, and then just to clarify what people will see when they go into the Sire Advice in terms of actually identifying those bulls then as being resistant to TB or potentially susceptible to TB then.
Yeah, so I suppose just a couple of different points there. I suppose some of the work we've completed here with the team here in ICBF, my IT colleagues here, they've put a lot of work in making this more visible. So the first of all place you'll see it there is on the bull selector screener step there on Sire Advice, the PTA value of the bull you're selecting. So look, we've adopted a traffic light system. So there are certain bulls that we know from reactor data coming in from the department that seem to be more susceptible to getting TB if there is a reactor or a breakdown, and there's other bulls that seem to be more resistant. So they'll be here on green. On the Sire Advice, they'll have a PTA of less than 6.2, less than 6%. And then the ones that'll be in red will be over 9%. So typically the ones that'll be, more susceptible to getting TB, the progeny from those bulls, for example. I suppose it's more visible to the farmer in terms of, picking their bull team. So they might pick out their 8 or 9 bulls, whatever the case may be. And look, it'll all depend, Stuart, on the individual farmer and their circumstances. Look, maybe TB was never an issue in their herd and maybe it's not a concern. But then there's other herds out there where TB might have had a couple of outbreaks over the last 5, 10, 15 years, or maybe there's neighbours in trouble in your area. And look, maybe it's something that you need to adopt into your breeding program then as a selection. And look, I suppose it may be the case of changing your bull because of TB if you really want to improve on it going forward to reduce your risk. I'm not saying it's a cure-all solution, Stuart, but we do see it having a role in reducing numbers overall. The number of reactors has doubled since 2017. I think there's about 40,000 plus reactors now. It's doubled. So it's a huge issue, a huge problem out there. And I suppose breeding has a role in helping to reduce this going forward. Another thing I'd make listeners aware of, Stuart, there as well in terms of the visibility of the PTA. So again, if you're in a genotype herd, you can actually, and a non-genotype herd, you have a PTA figure for your individual cows as well, available on the EBI profile screen, for example. So if you want to check out which cows are in the green with a good PTA for TB, you can actually check on those. And again, you may be a couple of cows in the red that you thought you might use for dairy breeding that you might decide, well, maybe I'll change that one now if I really want to focus in on TB as being an issue I want to improve in my herd going forward, for example.
Yeah, so it's available to look at from both the dam side and the Sire side, yeah. Okay, so then I suppose just to wrap up then, so there's 4,500 herds in the country have used Sire Advice last year. You've been actively contacting herds in the last couple of weeks, I suppose, in terms of trying to engage with them to complete them for 2025. There's a whole load of other herds obviously out there that haven't done it. If there's people listening that are saying, this is news to me now, but I think I'd like to try it out, what can they do in terms of getting a Sire Advice done? Who do they contact? Or
yeah, so Stuart, look, I suppose first of all, there, Stuart, so look, we have been sending out various text messages and emails to farmers there to help them to run Sire Advice. I suppose the first resource I point them towards is we have a ICBF YouTube channel there, and the Sire Advice help videos that goes through each steps, 1 to 6, in terms of female selections, picking the bulls, the allocation piece, the generating the results, and then sending off the handheld or the breeding chart. So look, that's we like to think a lot of user-friendly resource there a farmer can use straight away. They're on this Sire Advice landing page, the help videos as well. And for farmers who may not have run it before, I suppose the big thing is just don't be afraid to ask or ask for help, we're under the end of the phone here in the Heart Plus team here. We'll try and talk you through as best we can. But look, Stuart, obviously Teagasc advisors in general are out there to lend a hand as well. I'm sure dairy farmers will be going to meet them in the coming weeks for various other scheme applications. And look, this is a job that could be maybe picked off as well, potentially. And of course, the AI company have their own breeding advice and office help as well. And look, I know from talking to them, they're very happy to lend a hand as well in terms of getting it around. So look, the big job is just sitting down, to getting the few minutes to run it and to go through it, Stuart.
I suppose the big thing though then is that the farmers are the ones who know the cows best at the same time. So there is a lot to be said for them actually taking a bit of ownership of it and doing the cow selection piece anyway. And if like they actually running the program and so forth is okay, maybe you might go back to the AI companies or to ourselves here in Teagasc or contact the team in Heart Plus about running it. But like ultimately, we're going to be looking at numbers in terms of what cows are genetically wise, but she might have the best genetics in the world, but if she's a cross cow or she's a slow cow or something like that, you don't necessarily want to be breeding from her. And the only person who's going to be able to say that is the farmer themselves in individual herd cases.
Yeah, correct, Stuart. And look, we hope that I know you mentioned this, we mentioned the Sire Advice, the maintenance sub-index and the female selector tools, but there's other very useful columns in terms of filtering cows. The low EVI cows, for example, can be easily marked as potential beef mating or late calvers. Obviously, farmers or milk recording can mark out those poor performers as well. And I suppose the feedback we get from technicians, for example, Stuart, if the Sire Advice is done to, in a reasonably sound way, that when your technician will call into your yard next week onwards, for a lot of cases, that what comes up with the handheld, well, they'll know that Stuart Childs wants a day of beef straw in that cow or a dairy straw, and that's all mapped out before the breeding season kicks off. And look, our feedback is very clear from the technicians we speak to. Look, they really like that. Look, farmers are busy. They're not always going to be in the yard the day or the morning, whatever the case may be, the evening when the technician is there. But if it's up in the handheld, look, there's no arguments or debate about it. The technician has a clear set of instructions to work from. And look, we think that's a huge asset. And look, in the DIY context, again, DIY farmers are just as busy. It'll come up on the breeding chart of the handheld, the correct selection for that cow. And if you sit down, I suppose, and I always say, Stuart, you could spend a week actually going through your cows in terms of what we should be getting in dairy or beef if we really want to go to the int to green it. But there's a few very quick and easy things you can do on the female selector screen to make good decisions in terms of what's an attack to get a targeted breeding program for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's worth emphasizing again then as well, like that it is a real communication tool, the Sire Advice, like that. Like you said, people just aren't like it's busy. Everybody's busy, and people are gone out of the yard a lot of the time. Maybe when the AI technician comes and they're literally opening the gate and just leaving the cows off into a paddock or whatever. And there's no need for him or her to have to make contact with the farmer to find out what's to happen if that's up on the wall and inside in the dairy, or if, as you said, if it's coming up in the handheld there. So, and I think it's important as well for the DIY person that they've put the thought and the effort into it before they're in the heat of the battle, basically. So they're standing there now, we have to put a straw in a cow here. What straw is it? And if you don't know what you're going to do in there, it must be a bit of a nightmare. I think anyway, to be trying to fathom what you're going, which bull will I put on this cow, basically. Like it's a real punt.
Yeah, and look, sort of just as I say, when the inbreeding piece is taken care of for the as well, look, this I said there's just no downside. It's just finding that half an hour to or less, to just to run through it. It's you can do a very good Sire Advice without doing a couple of very simple things, Stuart, I would always say. And a lot of farmers have got the catalogue since, start of January. So they have a fair idea what bulls they know the bulls are going to use, probably 3 weeks ago. Just a matter now, just sitting down to go that extra step in terms of sorting out the females and finish it out.
Very good. So, as you said, Dan, yourselves in ICBF and obviously all the various advisors across the companies and Teagasc and so forth are happy to assist people to do this, and we would love to see more people using it. So we would encourage people to take the next step if you haven't already done it, and to make contact with someone in relation to running Sire Advice for 2025. But we'll wrap it up at that, Dan, and thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks for that.
That's all for this week's episode of the Dairy Age podcast, and my thanks to Dan O'Riordan for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can email us on our dedicated Dairy Age email address, dairyage.podcast@teagasc.ie. I'm Stuart Childs, and join us next time for your Dairy Age.